But just talking a little bit more about this center situation, obviously this organization as a whole is thin down the middle. And maybe not thin as far as numbers, but thin as far as, what's the word here? Ability, skill. I don't know what the word is. Basically a second line center, right? We have, in my opinion, 3 third line centers in Aho, with Drury, Kotkaniemi, and Jordan Staal. And then we're kind of throwing one up. And one could argue that Jordan Staal is actually the 2C based on ice time. I mean, you could argue that.
Mm-hmm.
But between Kotkaniemi and Drury, somebody plays that 2C position, and neither of them are that high-end second-line center that you like to have.
Mm-hmm.
So, as far as depth goes, maybe we're fine. But, what is your take on the center position and the second-line center? Is that something that you believe needs to be addressed this year, maybe at the trade deadline? Or is this something you think that, really needs to be addressed in the offseason? Or, do you think it's fine the way it is? Like, I'm just curious what your take is.
Well, it's definitely not fine the way it is. I'll go ahead and scratch that one off the list now. The reason why I say that is like, and I was talking about this with that poll that I did on X the other day. I'm at a loss to understand what the dynamic is between Jesperi Kotkaniemi, Rod, and the organization at this point.
Yeah.
He's getting paid like a second-line center. He doesn't always have second-line center minutes. I felt like he was playing really well until the Columbus game, and I feel like he's not been the same since the lines got shuffled after he had that one really bad period. So I don't know, and this is pure speculation on my part, I don't know what his dynamic is, if they still see him as that player, if Rod still sees him as that player. That's the one question that would have to be answered in regards to that. Like I said before, I never saw Jesperi Kotkaniemi as anything more than a Jordan Staal replacement with a little bit more of an offensive upside. Now, as far as second line centers go, internal hires, long term, you have one being groomed possibly with Felix Unger-Sorm, because there's a lot of similarities in his game to Aho, and he could be that second guy in the middle as soon as he develops some more, needs to put some muscle on, because he got absolutely ragged all the times in the preseason. So that's a long-term solution. But as far as like, we need to solve this problem now, if you go to the trade market, you can maybe get someone like Ryan O'Reilly if Nashville continues to struggle, because they're not throwing in the towel on the season yet. They're actually looking at trying to improve the team and not blow it up at the moment, but they've got a very limited window to make that happen. So they're going to have to start selling at some point or another, and Ryan O'Reilly's cap hit is not much bigger than KK's, and he's in the second year of that contract, so you would have enough time to have him in the lineup. That would bridge the gap until Felix Unger-Sorm is ready, if he comes out as projected, and you would still have Jordo for 2 more years, so you would have plenty at the center position at that point if you went out and got someone like that. So that's one option you might have, is something along those lines. Now, What I want to try, and I know that I have been disagreed with this on a multitude of occasions, but considering how he has played this season, I want Necas tried at center.
Ooh.
3 games. These next 3 games. And the reason why I say these next 3 games is all 3 of these games are games that Carolina should win. They're at home. You'll have last change. You don't have to match them up against anybody significant, and you're not playing the best teams over the course of these 3 games. Now, here's the big benefits of Necas moving to center. Oh, actually, before I go into that, if Necas works out at center, because we already know Carolina's going to pay him, he's going to stay. There's no way they're letting him go.
I hope so.
If Necas works out at center, this team is one top 6 winger away from being set for nearly 8 years, maybe 9. You could maybe argue a decade, but for a very, very long time. If he works out there, big if, but if he works out there, it's like, okay, who's number 1, Aho or Necas? Doesn't matter. Where's the face-off? That's basically what it comes down to at that point. And then you can build your top 6 around that. Then you don't have to go out to the trade market and get someone to play a second line center, because one of the hardest things to acquire in this league is a top 6 center. And the only ways that you get them is either you draft them and develop them, which is what Montreal's plan for Kotkaniemi was, and they botched it. You trade for them and you give up a lot, or you spend a ton of money in free agency. And we're already going to spend the money on Necas anyway. If you move him to center and he works out, then you have solved a lot of issues. And then at that point, all you have to do is open the checkbook. And I'm just throwing a name out here, if someone like Mikko Rantanen or Brock Besser does hit the open market, they're not going to, but just for an example's sake, if one of those guys hit the open market, you're already set down the middle at that point. You still got 2 more years with Jordo, and then you could either trade KK or Drury. I would imagine they would try to move KK just from a salary standpoint instead, but then you would be set right there. Now, one thing that I stated in regards to Necas yesterday, I feel like his defensive game, his overall 200-foot game, his puck management in the defensive zone, all 3 zones for that matter, but particularly in the defensive zone, and his ability to generate entries in tight spaces has improved significantly from last year. If it had not improved, he would not be near the top of the league in points. And then the third and final thing, and then I'll shut up. I know I've been rambling a whole lot here about this. The third and final thing is that even though his goals and his primary assists would go down a little bit, I think he would make up for that mostly with secondary assists, and he would still come out with very, very similar point totals.
Okay.
I have put a lot of thought into this. It kept me awake last night, really.
I mean, very, very convincing argument there, Brandon. I just don't think it. I just don't think. Well, a couple things. One, I don't think Martin Necas is a center. Yes, I agree with what you said about his improved play defensively and like you said, all 3 zones. I agree, very much so. But I think if you take him off the wing and you put him in the middle, I think a lot of that improvement goes away immediately, and he immediately regresses, and then you kind of turned off whatever it is that's been fueling him up to this point this season, in my opinion. I know, I know what you say as far as, see what you got, see if he can do it, because if it works out, like you said, it could set him up for, X amount of years. But I just don't think he's a center. And I think Rod knows he's not a center. And I think and I've been saying this ever since, the off season. I think Necas just needs to own the wing. And I feel like he has. Like, just own it, be the best right wing forward you can be. And score your goals. Set your teammates up. And that's what he's doing. And I think the capacity that he's playing in right now is what, provides the best help to this team, I guess. And, I think hopefully Felix Unger-Sorum develops into that. And then, like you said, we have homegrown talent right there. But if not, you might have to just go get one.